Alright, ladies and gents, let's dive into another overview. Basically, Pro Tour Albuquerque, Pro Tour Ixalan already wrapped up, and we have some conclusions to make based on that. And Seth Manfield took it down with Sulta Energy, but Timur and 4-color energy builds and all the aggressive variants were actually more popular archetypes at that event. And we have a lot of data actually from MtGgoldfish.com. They wrapped up it pretty nicely in terms of numbers and statistics and most popular cards, and also provide you all the deck lists in one place together with some conclusions that they derived themselves, and also what it means for the future metagame. And yeah, pretty weird stats, top cards, all just energy cards or cards from Timur Energy. Yeah, sorry for the background, but I thought it was like visually convenient. Diane is the sole interesting card from the Sulta Energy decks. It's basically like Harness Lightning at sorcery speed. That's basically what it is. And actually, with a lot of energy, you can get around indestructibility, for example, for Hazoret. But yeah, there was Jeskai Approach in top 8. It fell short to the eventual winner. Had some interesting choices. Basically, had no Fumigate that basically bites the deck severely in those quarterfinals, because F just played around Settled the Wreckage the entire time and did not have to play around Fumigate, and that was that basically what sealed the deal. So the splash is kind of free because of the mana base, but the only real red card in the main deck is Harness Lightning, and I'm not convinced that this slight upgrade on some removal is actually worth it, even though it's better than Fatal Push for sure, because you can get rid of all the free drops, you can get rid of all the 5 drops, etc. Commit Memory is another weird card in an approach control deck, basically replacing Cast Out. I'm not sure if it's better, but it's definitely interesting. It does nearly the same thing, except that you're not vulnerable to opposing cast outs and stuff like that, but I don't think that it's something you have to worry about. Fury Cannonade is basically your Kozilek's return of choice that you have, and their pirates don't really exist, not so much, outside of like some gift builds. And it's a pretty nice addition against Mono-Red, but I think Curacles and Authorities just do the trick as well, pretty much. Locust God is interesting, but then again it's 6 mana, and if you don't splash at all, red or black, you can just get away with Kefnuts together with Hulks and Curacles. It's most of the time enough, and I do like Kefnut actually more than Locust God, so I'm not really convinced that I actually need to splash anything. Yeah, there was, I believe, the Mono-Red and Mardu deck in top 4, and nowadays Ramonap Red actually plays Harsh Mentors and Ferocidon's main deck. That's basically because Timur Energy is so popular right now, but I think it has to die out a little bit because the deck actually has not performed like astoundingly well at the Pro Tour. And then in the finals we had the blue-white Get Pharaoh's Gift. That was an all-in builds with 4 refurbish, no gate as far as I remember, just 4 gifts, and then just cantrip with 4 Champions of the Wits, with 4 Charter Cores, with I believe 2 Search of Ascanta, and I think 4 Strategic Planning as well. So it's an all-in digging build just to try to get turn 4 gifts out on the battlefield and bring back those Angel of Inventions and so on. And an interesting card out of the sideboard of that deck was the Favor Warden, I believe. 3 mana 1/3 that Oblivion rings the creature away. With gifts going, it's actually a pretty nice tool. It's basically a removal mistake that you can like keep on bringing back. Well, not keep on, but still gets a lot of value out of it. Moving on, interesting choices for Mardu vehicles. 3 copies of Duskdawn in the sideboard and a couple of Walking Ballistas that I don't really like. I think just extra Bomb Carry or things like that is actually better. I don't think Ballista is just like that amazing in the deck. But I do like the Duskdawns in the sideboard. It basically serves the function of Bondusless Reckoning / Fumigate in the deck / Settled Wreckage, and I think this option of Duskdawn actually fits the deck much better than all the other ones, because, well, you do get to keep some of your creatures and get rid of everything that you actually really care about, and you get to basically flashback this card and buy a bunch of your own creatures. So you get a lot of value out of the cards, which basically wipes what you need to wipe just for 4 mana instead of 5, for example, and you do get continuous value out of it with the Aftermath. And then a couple interesting cards outside of 4-color energy builds. Those are Vraska's and the Sky Sovereign Console flagship. Vraska, well, I think it was just a natural progression. People figured out that it gets rid of everything problematic for Temur energy. Like, you can get rid of enchantments in game 1, that is pretty crucial. You can get rid of Chandras, that could be sometimes problematic. Some vehicles, etc. It just fixes a lot of problems for energy decks. And it's kind of weird that they only now figured out that flagship actually is worth it in energy decks, because, well, I had at least one in my Mardu vehicles deck in the sideboard for quite some time, because, well, you get rid of all those refiners, virtuosos, all the 10 free drops, and you get to more easily get rid of opposing Vraskas and Chandras and stuff like this. So yeah, it's kind of like surprising that they only figured it out now, but maybe actually most of energy players who were preparing for the Pro Tour figured it out like a long time ago and just remained silent about it. Blazing, well, it pops up in energy sometimes. Basically, it's a nod for against token stacks. I don't think it's like all that great against mono-red. It's just okay-ish. I suppose it was mostly against tokens. Blossom in defense main deck as a spicy one-off is pretty interesting because, well, it catches opponents off guard, it allows you to have better combat, allows you to protect some blockers to protect the Chandra, for example, or Raska, things like that. Cartesian Ambition, I'm pretty happy to see that back in the sideboards of energy decks because, well, it just single-handedly wins you all the aggressive matchups, technically, because you have no shortage of big threats to put it on. And then as for really cool decks, of which there weren't that many in the best performance standard decks of the event, you have the very focused kind of all-in cycling deck, kind of reminded me about Blue-Eyed Approach Control, but instead of Approach you have Drakehaven as a win condition, and then with Sarcophagus you get to really dig and recycle all the good cycling cards and get a lot of value this way and just drown your opponent in card advantage and so forth. Arcthing and Consign Oblivion is something that pops up in blue-black control decks, but blue-black had pretty bad weekend, so I don't expect to see much of those cards, even though I'm not a huge fan of Arcthing. I think Consign Oblivion is kind of fine in blue-black. Really want to see either Kinpin or the Death Toucher to drop if you're Esper or blue-black, because, well, mono-red is not going anywhere, and red-black is probably also gonna pop up occasionally, as well as mono black and Mardu, so you do need cards like those. Jesus Defeat I can only tolerate in some like blue black or Grixis. I don't think it's a great card for blue white control, unless we are going to see for sure a lot more blue white than I expect. Because otherwise I don't think it's worth like wasting that slot. You'd rather have more alternative win cons. Plus hybrid win approach is actually not that great, and then you just bring on more alternative win cons and just a bunch of negates, and that should more or less seal the deal most of the time, because like with Jesus Defeat you're improving your mirror matchup significantly. Then yeah, all the gift and token decks have some interesting text like Angel of Sanctions, which I think we should see more, because it's such a flexible card. It's basically reminds you about the numbers behind collected company decks in Modern, because you do not want to run too many non-creature cards in your sideboard, so you want your text to be actually creatures, so that your collected company math checks out. And same for gift decks, you can't dilute the deck too much, so you have to run things like Angel of Sanctions instead of like cheaper dedicated removals and such. And Gear Hulk, I don't think it's all that great, because now we have even Forkal Energy decks that got back to Scarab God, that brought in Flagship, that brought in Vraska, so on average Gear Hulk scenarios will be much worse than previously. I think it's not that great. Sunmare is an interesting thing. For example, if you're on Esper tokens or Esper gift, then let's say you run some Scarab God's main or side, but especially if you run some of them main, and then you don't want to play like Scarab God's 3 or 4, you can diversify your portfolio, so to speak, and run some Sun Mirrors in the main or side, so that you especially in post-cyborg games have enough of like big threats that carry on the game. Appeal 40 is from the green-white aggro deck that I kinda liked, that performed reasonably well at the Pro Tour. Just I guess didn't have a great run in the draft portion, but I looked at the deck list and it seemed fine to me, and aggressive enough, and has a lot of tricks and pretty well-rounded sideboard, and people will definitely be caught off guard by that deck and just wouldn't know like what to play around. Hostage Taker is here just because straight out blue black gets Ferris Gift is also a deck, not just blue white or Esper, for example. Not a huge fan. Travis Wu went like 7-3 in standard part of the Pro Tour with the deck, but not a huge fan. I don't think it's like better than blue white. You get a lot of disruption spells like Hostage Taker, for example, but I think Angel of Inventions just improves your win rate much better than Hostage Taker, for example. Devastation pictured here because Grixis control is still a thing, even though it's more like a dinosaur, so to speak, because it's really odd to see blue-black control or Grixis control nowadays, especially after Pro Tour, once people actually look at the data. But to the glorified highlighted here is, since mono-black aggro is a thing, it's not just about being black-red with Hazoret. I'm not sure if mono-black is better than black-red, and I don't know if that's relevant, because black-red also hasn't had like the best performance ever at the Pro Tour, meaning that Mardu or mono-red might just be strictly better, but they're still decks. They just have lower win rate, but then again the field was kind of like weird with so much of energy, and you know, in the more diverse fields, perhaps black-red or mono-black would have better results. But then if you're unsure or just don't like the deck so much, or want to play something else, or just don't want to take any risks. So yeah, you're probably much better off with mono red, or at least Mardu, if you prefer it better than mono red. But I still like the deck. I think the build that went 7-3 from Andres Prost was actually pretty well rounded as far as, you know, deck building is concerned. I'm just not sure if I would recommend this deck at all. It's good as budget, so I suppose for certain criteria is actually good. Pummeler decks are still there, even though more of a fringe tech, but you never know. If the metagame shifts in a very specific direction, then pummeler decks can become great again, because, well, they really haven't lost anything really from the rotation, and it's just about the fact that they haven't really gained anything, rather. But we'll see. It could be like a secret weapon for known metagame at certain point before formats rotates again. Ixalan's binding is for all those tokens and gift decks that just want to get rid of something tricky, but kind of want to lock it out in the Medlin Mage style. Gideon's intervention is another thing that people could try, but the thing is that I don't think yeah, for example, if it's like a stockpile and it's really annoying, or if it's gets for gift, intervention doesn't really work that well in that case, but binding does, for instance. Yeah, speaking of like scenarios, and then I don't really fancy either one in blue-white control builds, because they're a bit too narrow, a bit too specific. You already have cast out, which cycles, and you have this combo plan, so you don't have to, you know, grind all the games out. You can just try to finish up with the combo, or I don't know, with like Holox or Caracals or Kefnets. And I'd much rather like the 3-mana aura that locks a creature and lets you gain 3 life. That's more relevant in the main deck. And after sideboard, well, you just have enough of alternative win conditions so that stuff like binding actually doesn't matter. Plus, binding actually doesn't hinder approach of the second sands itself. So yeah. And Bestiary, we saw that in energy decks, but I think it has right to be as a occasional spice in a huge range of decks, from Sulta Energy to Timar to whatever green aggro deck you have in mind. Basically any creature green deck might want it in the sideboard, because I really love the card, but you have to be careful. Just have to think like what options you have, what works, what not. But overall I really like the card. I don't know if your deck really has a terrible matchup against Timar or against Blue-White Approach. You could tech in your sideboard things like Lost Legacy or Solemnity, but I think the cards are super narrow. You can certainly improve certain matchups, but if it's a large tournament, I don't know if you really want to do this sort of thing. Slash at Talents as a 4-off over all copies of a fourth of the consoles was something that I spotted in one Blue-Eyed approach control list from the Protor, and I really don't like that. I like Slash at Talents as an occasional like 1 or 2 off in the main or sideboard for all the hyper aggressive decks, but it's not amazing against Timur by any margin. And I think I would have all my 4 copies of Authority in the sideboard before I put in any Slash of Talents, but it's a much better main deck card than Authority. But then again, you have so many things that you could play, and I don't think you have space. And then if you don't splash and really don't fancy Aether Meltdown, you could summon Unsummons, which kinda work fine in that role. Still think like Meltdown is better because on curve it kind of like locks out a creature. You don't really care about them like being able to block because your game one plan is approaching, and on summon kind of sets them back a little bit, but it doesn't really deal with the threat. Aketra's Monument and Aketra itself here is just a reminder that Mono White Winnie is a deck. It wasn't like full on vamps, but it was quite full of those. It was more like just White Winnie deck, kind of like Mono White Monument deck. Playing everything that's playable at each part of the curve. Yeah, like the deck, it's okay for all those Craig Vescos out there. You have this Mono White Winnie or Green White Aggro, so you have like playable options actually, even though those might not be like the top tier decks. But if you like really understand the metagame and the matchups, you could really tack in a bunch of spice in there and you know, win almost any matchup you want. And then Yahini is just a reminder that there are so many black aggro decks out there, and I think I've seen it in some other types of decks as well. But yeah, like you have that option as well, so everything's fine. Even though we do have like sort of like the big five of the format, but then there are actually more decks that you can play, not just, you know, for fringe play, but there are decks that are secretly like tier 1 as well, like blue-white approach, because if you have a certain composition of the metagame in the coming weeks, it could become a legitimate tier 1 deck, and people luckily had a lot of success with the deck, so keep that in mind. It's one of the, let's put, it's like not exactly sleeper of the format, but it's kind of a deck that's on everybody's radar, but a deck that not many people actually take seriously, let's put it this way, or not as seriously now. But yeah, thanks. Subscribe, check the links in the description below, and leave any feedback also below in the comments. And yeah, until the next sale, bye.